I have a question about cardiac exercise. I'm having great experiences, and now I just realized that the heart exercise is really the hardest part of the basic exercises. So it's really hard for me to let myself fall into the feeling, so sometimes I really have to really work at it. Yes, and I'll be honest here, I really took something out of eroticism because I thought I could always go back to it, but it's actually like that in everyday life. It's really not easy for me. Do you perhaps have a little help or something?
I'm glad you're taking such a fundamental question. The mantra was the easiest for me, and because I had a somewhat murderous mother, the old tradition of breaking the child's will before 1900, and because of my fear of death, I sat at a lake in Berlin and tried it just to get the feeling of peace, even though I was now sitting by the lake. And what happened? I managed it for about 5 seconds, and then I thought, what if someone comes from behind and stabs me? So that's how it started. At some point, I managed 10 seconds, but then I allowed myself to turn around every 10 seconds to make sure no one was coming. I just read it in the books, like Dalai Lama and stuff like that. He always said that you just have to keep creating what you're missing longer and harder. And then meditation research came along, which was also gentle. For example, the more often I give in to my tantrums, the faster anger explodes in my brain because it is a very strong network in the brain. And with the other things, you should just be patient, because just as you have trained yourself to get angry, you can also become peaceful. And that's difficult because our culture is like an inside-out glove. For yourself, unfortunately, you are nothing for yourself. In any case, that's what spirituality does to you. You're not allowed to have anything for yourself at first, and then you should always love others, forgive others, and become completely defenseless and defenseless. Then you're good. No, then you'll have panic attacks and become depressed. But maybe that's your bad karma. And what we are learning here is actually contemplation of oneself, being at home, being for oneself. So the forbidden, almost every system you come into contact with will eat you up. So first of all, what do I know? Church? Yes, great. Can you sing? What honorary positions? Buff, buff, buff. But they don't ask, how are you? How can we support you? What contributions can we make to your life so that your life finally becomes beautiful? Yes, do you have such a sport? Okay, maybe a sports club works. If you stay away from the usual requests to donate and do work, then you'll be looked at more askance. But if you always make great jokes in the locker room, it's okay. So that's what I mean by that. They don't mean anything bad, but they are all individuals. So individual lives have no value. You always have to make contributions to others. And that's what attracts the attention, especially of the good bourgeois, cultured people. Then I don't want to say bourgeois, but if you just try to be a good person according to current norms and to belong, your attention is always on the outside. So with men, I don't really know. But at least with women, before you say anything in a discussion, you first probe, what's this about? What's important to the others? So I'll now answer a little more broadly. Why is the emotional exercise so difficult? Because I hadn't explained such backgrounds in the basic seminar. If you are a fearful person, especially, you have non-stop scanning like a windshield wiper. Where are potential dangers lurking here? So again, your attention is only on the outside and what is happening in a mystical perspective. Where the attention goes is like a connecting line. You can now load everything over there. Being an open-hearted pro-social person, buff, as soon as you look at how the others are doing, you get the answer too, and you can't tell the difference so quickly. Is that my depression? Is that my anxiety? Is it my tension? My being stressed? My eating binge? When you finally start to build up your feelings. Until now, you were always buried like Troy under sand, or who knows what else was lying on top of it. Maybe even dog poop, and I explained it like this before. You are a chocolate hollow body. This is different than those cheap, full of chocolate balls around Christmas time, when you're, say, an Easter bunny or Christmas boy and pressure comes from outside. Do you have the bump? First of all, we turn ourselves into a ball that isn't completely rubber, i.e. near completely chocolate ball, and then the others can't leave such an impression on us in the truest sense. Our essence, our soul is empathy, our soul is compassion. And wherever you direct your attention, it will fill you, even flood you. It prevents you from getting in touch with your own soul and the requirement to declutter your soul a la Marie Kondo. And it's possible, it's much easier than Western therapies allow you to do. That's why it's a very detailed answer, but because it's so central. That's why the emotional exercise is so important, so that you learn to control. And at the beginning it looks hopeless, like the will exercise, because of course your wave will also be broken. You are always told something bad from the outside, i.e. your impulses. And that is almost always the feedback at school. So only if it somehow fits the learning material and the goals and the current topic and the development of the group and so on, you will be limited in your own impulses, because your attention is the most important thing. If you lose attention to yourself and no longer have contact with yourself, then you are part of an easily led crowd. We undo all of that, and that's why the mystical abilities are nothing supernatural. I was so shocked as this became increasingly clear to me. And then, more and more, I have such a hatred for the church because I devoted my entire life to theology and the search for God, including theory and ancient philosophy and history. When I found out that the church doesn't just say the acronym, "We're victims of violence," we're screwed. And if we were free beings, then we would all be looking for lost happiness, like in the book. Like in the foreword is important, and then it kind of grows from page 105 onwards. Such a free, primitive people. They don't have to do mystic exercises, they don't have to meditate, because they can choose for themselves. And if they do violence to their children, like just lock them up in a little playpen or something like that, they don't have the heart to break their child's will because they have compassion. Or, like the Indians, when the Jesuits came to Canada and said that the Indians are so primitive and barbaric that they would take their children back from school if they noticed that their children were not doing well. We absolutely have to separate the children from their parents even more in order to develop the children in our spirit. So for them, Indians were primitive because the parents still protected their children instead of being agents of so-called higher social goals. That's why the mystic says, no one believes in utopia, it's a mess, always stays in the here and now. What do you feel now? All that aside, it is a huge work of destruction, and if it weren't for that, you would all be mystics, because that is true nature. This is nothing special and nothing supernatural. And it's all the cooler when the church doesn't even stick to the norm as a whole, but says that being a mystic is only for the chosen ones. And even if you are awake as a child, at some point you suffocate because you have no support, no one to confirm your perception, not church either. But it also says, forgive parents, honor, wish the best for the state, honorary positions. That is what is called cultural Protestantism, i.e. ethics.